this gets down to our personal thing, but sometimes let's talk about movies. Are there some movies that would be acceptable for God's people to watch? And some that's not acceptable? Would you agree? But then there are those that says that you shouldn't go to movies at all. And I have to tell you, when I was a little boy, they loaded us up in a pickup and we all went into town and watched the movie, and we was all from the youth group at the church. That's a Baptist one though, so. But then, how about this? What kind of music should we listen to?
Psalms and hymns and spiritual songs.
Oh
The
boy,
Bible says.
yeah, that's what the Bible. I knew you hit me with that one. Okay, but
Singing and making melody in your heart.
make melody in your heart. All right. I like all type of music. I have to be honest with you. And by the way, have you noticed that with cartoons they play what kind of music? Classical, absolutely. And just look at your children; they love cartoons, right? But think of the music they're hearing with that. Well, this is things that I know that churches have had problems with. And then, how about this one? You'll like this one. How about TV programs? There are those that said you shouldn't even have a TV in your house, right?
You'd probably waste a lot less time if you didn't.
Well, that's probably true.
You'd get a lot more accomplished, you'd do a lot more things.
If you don't have a TV, I've noticed with myself that I can sit down and watch an hour movie and it seems like it went like that. And when I sit down and read my Bible and I think I've been reading for hours and I look and it's been 10 minutes. I'm talking about me. So, but what about programs on TV? Should you be selective?
You need to be very selective.
Very selective, okay. And we're gonna get down to how you do this at the end of this. Okay, let's see. How should I spend my free time? I could do like Larry and go fishing. Are you fishing now?
Hunting right now.
Hunting now. Just think that poor fellow retired to do that and he works at the boat shop. But anyway. And I'm learning from Larry, so I want to share that. Hope I didn't embarrass you, brother. You'll embarrass me the first chance you get, I know. So. All right. How about this one? How should I spend my Sundays?
Well, if you're at First Baptist, you go.
Oh, you do? Okay. So.
It's not much of a day of rest.
Not much of a day of rest, okay. And we're going to have to talk about this too, when we get down to the end of part of this. Okay, well, how about choosing a Bible-believing church to go to? How do you make that selection? Because there's a lot of good Bible-believing churches, but none of them are like the one you go to. Because if they were, you'd be over there. That's a good thought, isn't it? We go to a church that we usually choose for one reason or another. And I'm not so sure that all the time our choices is about doctrine. What do you think?
I think a lot of times people go because their friends are there.
Their friends are there, or family. Maybe they were raised there too.
Or the
Okay, good.
Things that will minister to them, makes them,
Okay.
certain different things that they're going to get out of being part of the church.
Sure, okay. One of the things they've said about mega churches is they have so much to offer. And they do. I mean, I've gone to a number of mega churches, and they do have a lot to offer the youth, and then just a number of things for different people in the church. There's a lot to offer to them, and so they talk about that. Is that a good reason to go to a mega church? Or is it not?
Depends on what they're teaching and preaching.
Okay, so now we down to their doctrine. That's the important part. Now, when Jesus was here on the earth, realizing that the Mosaic law had been in place, did Jesus obey the law when he was here?
He fulfilled it, yes.
So he did. He fulfilled the ceremonial law, the civil law, and what's the other one?
Dietary.
Well, that dietary law too. Very good. Okay, so I got into the moral. I didn't put that one in. Moral, civil, and ceremonial. That's a sacrifice. But Christ fulfilled the Mosaic law. So we're no longer under the Mosaic law. Now I'm going to tell you something that I hadn't thought of till I was studying in the last few weeks. And that is, we're under the Messianic law. That sounds real big, then I had to work on that one. But basically what it means that we're under the law of Christ. Give you an example. When he was here, he said, it's been said that you should not commit adultery, right? What did Jesus say?
Look at others with lustful eyes, you have committed. If you look at others with lustful eyes, you have already committed the act.
And so he took it a step beyond what the Mosaic law was. So the Messianic law is different, or makes it broader. Is that a good word? Or it's more detailed. And that was that just looking at a person, you could commit that, right? It gets into a lot of that in the New Testament, and I didn't go through and name all of them, but I just want you to look at that. When you're studying in the future, look at what Christ says about the things that's under the law and how he expands on it and shows that it's not your action so much, it's your thought and your motive for doing these things. Is that right? By the way, that gets us back to our lesson today, and that is when Paul's talking about the ones that's complaining about the meat and the vegetarian. And by the way, we haven't touched on this yet, but we ended up talking about certain days or religious days. Now we know that the Jews, the Pharisees, or let's just leave it with the Jewish law, the Sabbath is a holy day. But the Gentiles were not raised under the Mosaic law, and so therefore they're probably not interested in the Sabbath day. So it could be a problem if well, down the street from me there's the Seventh-day Adventist, and they believe that Saturday is the day to worship, right? Now down at First Baptist, we believe Sunday is the day to worship. Or really do we believe that? Do we not believe that we worship every day of our life? The church has made a decision that we meet on Sunday to have a worship service, but every day belongs to God. Are we in agreement on that? Okay, so here's the thing. Under what Paul's talking about, the problem is that you could worship on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but when you force somebody else to do it because you say that's what the Bible teaches, now you cross the lines. That makes sense. This gives us a lot of liberty in the Lord. Okay? And so how about meat or vegetables? If you want to eat vegetables and own vegetables, is that okay? Sure. Absolutely. If you just, I don't know if you could just eat meat, but if you was really a meat eater, is that okay? Where does it become a problem?
You judge somebody else.
When you try to get somebody else to do it and say, this is what the Bible teaches, you have to do this, right? And that's what Paul's teaching here, is that we need to learn to, and I hate to use that word, get along, but we need to respect one another. And here's the other thing. He's already went ahead and said that because of this, each one of us has to give an account to God for the things done in the flesh, right? Well, who are you to tell somebody else's servant what to do? Isn't that what he's saying? But whose servant are we? We're Christ's servant, right? Therefore, God will deal with us. We don't have to be a judge over somebody else. Let the Lord take care of it. You know what? He made us. He pretty much knows how to handle us, right? But sometimes we like to help God out.
We shouldn't be a stumbling block to somebody else who has, whether they're vegetarian or whatever.
Okay.
Like in our home group, we have a vegetarian. So I always try to fix 2 or 3 dishes that doesn't have meat in it so that I can accommodate her likes.
Mhm.
If I put meat in everything, I would be a stumbling block to her.
Exactly.
So I try to, even though I might not agree with her philosophy,
Mhm.
I try to make it so that she feels comfortable in my home.
There you go. So in your home, you can do that, right?
Right.
Okay. And so you're not forcing her to eat meat.
But I saw, I got in the kitchen the other night and she was eating a piece of meat. But that's okay.
That's okay, because that was her choice.
That was her choice, yes.
Absolutely. But I think Paul has something to say about that too.
And her son does eat meat, so.
But-
But, we don't want to be a stumbling block to someone we're trying to witness to.
No, and that's the whole point,
Right.
isn't it? And I think that what Paul is saying is that we don't need to be running around spending our time critiquing other people. We need to spend time with our relationship with the Lord. Isn't that right?
Amen.
And who am I to judge you and what you're doing? Now, I mean, if it gets down to doctrinal, that's a whole different story. You understand that? We're talking about, they use the word non-essentials. I don't know what that means, but non-essentials.
It's a new
everything.
COVID term.
Oh, it's a new COVID time, okay. All right. So,
Well, whether
yes.
you eat meat or whether you don't, or whether you eat vegetables or whether you don't, that isn't gonna keep you out of heaven. That doesn't have a thing to do with your relationship with Jesus Christ. So
Okay,
that's why it's non-essential.
non-essential,
The
okay.
things that are essential are the things that is the difference between life in heaven or life in hell. So,
That's pretty essential.
that's pretty essential. And meat or not is not it. Now, don't take my meat away.
Up north, where our church was, down the street, a couple of blocks, maybe 3 or 4 blocks away, was a lady by the name of Ms. Norris. And her husband had been one of the professors at one of the institutes in Chicago. And he had passed away, and they had 2 sons. And one was named Bill, and he was in the fire department for Chicago. And the other one, Ron, and he worked for the state of Illinois in a finance department. And so she said to me one day, Paul, I want you and your wife to come over and have dinner at my house one night. And I want you to come, she said, and I want to have my boys and their wives over. And actually, I just want them to meet you because they kind of strayed from God. And so I said, love to do it. So when I got there that day and she was making the meal, she had this beautiful roast that rolled up, and inside that roast she had all them onions. And back at that time I could not eat onions because they made me deathly sick. And she said, what do you think? And I said, I think it's going to be great. And I'm figuring, if I eat, and if I can get out of here in 30 minutes, I can get home and get rid of it, and that'd be okay. And, but anyway, I mean, this was the special meal for these boys. They loved this meal, how she cooked. And I don't remember all about it now, but the vegetables that went with it and everything. So in the meantime, I was in the other room, and boy, did I have a prayer session. And I told God, that basically, Lord, I can't eat that stuff. But I'm trusting you because we want to make the right impression with these young men. So when it came time to eat, I had meat and vegetables. And I never got sick. And you know who I credit that to?
Oh,
Absolutely. Because after we've eaten, then we would read scripture. And this was their practice in their home. And there was Bibles on the table. And so we read a couple of chapters in the Bible. And then there was a question and answer time. And so I'm telling you, I spent 3.5 hours or maybe 4 hours at that dinner table after we ate that night, visiting and discussing scripture. And I was only able to do that because God took care of me. The other side of that, and I have to tell another part, Ron being a guy who worked for the revenue department for the state of Illinois, and if anybody knows them, you know they're about as straight as a crooked stick. But anyway, and I'm not saying he was crooked, I'm just saying the revenue department did. But Ron said to me, Paul, he said, who's doing your taxes this year? And I told him, he said, well, let me do them for you. And he said, I won't charge you anything. So he went through, and boy, I got more money back that year than I'd ever got in my life. I mean, he had so many write-offs. And sure enough, the IRS called me in because it was so different than the years before. And I reached a decision over that. I kind of said like Paul, all things are lawful to me, but not all things are expedient. Because I had to go down and sit with them IRS dudes and them go over everything I had listed on there. And he had listed things that I didn't know he listed, you know. And so when he got finished with telling me, he said, well, the end result was the IRS was really good to me. They only charged me something like $50 or $60. And that wasn't bad because I was looking at a lot more money. And then when I got ready to leave, he'd aggravated me so much that I had a track with me that cost 50 cents. And so I got up and I handed him the track and I said, that cost 50 cents. But don't worry about it. I'm not going to take it off my taxes. And I give it to him. And he came over and put his arm around me and he said, you know, he said, you've been fun. So, but what I come to the decision was, that I could write off a lot of things off my taxes and be legal about it, but you need to have proof of it.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely, that is a tax person. And so, but Ron didn't think I had to have all that. And then I told him about it, and he said, oh, you should have took me with him. We would have come out of there and they would have paid you $200. And I said, after they locked us up. You know? But anyway, I'm just saying that I met him through his mother, and we did have a relationship. And Bill also, because he worked for the fire department in Chicago. But this is how God works things. But if I had gone into that home with a bad attitude, look what would have happened. And by the way, Bill and Ron both are in church today. And I'm not saying it's because of we had a meeting, but I'm going to say it didn't hurt. How's that? Okay. I got to do this. At the end of our lesson, basically, it gets down to the bottom part. One fellow said that it's kind of like we're going to do this again. He kind of keeps going over the same thing and showing how that we get along with one another. And there's a professor down at Dallas Theological Seminary begins every class with this statement. I had to write it down because I get tongue-tied with it. But every class, when it goes in, he starts out with this. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. That when I tell you, then I will tell you what I told you. Then I will review. Did you get all that? Basically, what he's saying is, I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to retell you, and then I'm going to get around to tell you what I told you, and then I'm going to review what I told you. What we're saying is repetition is a means of teaching, right? You teachers, you know what we're talking about here. Okay, I want us to end today, and we could get a lot. I wanted to get into the practical side of this. I didn't just want to deal with what Paul's talking about, but more than that, what you and I deal with every day, getting along with people. But how about a song that I like, and I think it says this. How about, blessed be the tie that binds, you know it? I don't know if I can lead you, but here we go. Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. This one. When we asunder part, it gives us in. Am I by myself on it? In pain. Pardon me?
I don't know the second.
You don't know that word. Okay, I'll start again then. When we that's too high. When we asunder part, it gives us inward pain. But we shall still be joined in heart and hope to meet again. I didn't mean for that to be a solo, but anyway. You don't know that verse, okay. So I want to.
Sing first.
Well, my thought is this, that's the way I feel about our class, you know. When we leave, we look forward to being together again. If we don't meet here, we're going to meet up there. Is that good? God bless you. Have a great week. Thank you. And enjoy your Thanksgiving with your family. And how about this? Family, friends, no, food, family, friends, fellowship, and freedom. Okay.